Hello, my name is Ellen Miles. I'm the Programming and Outreach Coordinator for the Camas Public Library, and I am here with Floyd Wills, local author of the book, The Red-Haired Giants of Lovelock Cave and Other Ancient Mysteries. Thank you very much, Floyd, for joining me today.
Thank you, Ellen. I'd like to just say thanks to you and to everybody that's listening. It's a pleasure to be here.
Of course. We're excited that we can have you here on a Thursday afternoon. So I have a bunch of questions for you, but the first one is kind of easy. I just was hoping you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I grew up most of my life in the Portland, Oregon area and moved out to Vancouver probably about 10 years ago and lived out there for a few years and then kind of kept migrating east and ended up in Washougal. And I love this area, Camas Washougal area. It's just beautiful out here. Some rough life circumstances happened, and I ended up having to relocate for about 1.5 years to Oregon, but found my way back here. And now I'm back here in Washougal and have lived out here for about 1.5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I love it out here. Just beautiful scenery, small town feel to it, yet close to, the cities of, Vancouver and Portland. I went back to college later in life as an adult, and I earned my degree, a bachelor's degree in human development, and currently working on a master's degree in clinical counseling, and didn't realize how much I enjoyed writing until I immersed myself in college and all the research and writing. And I thought, wow, I actually kind of like this stuff. And a few of my instructors, encouraged me and said that I had some talent in that direction. So I was doing so much research and writing, I thought, why don't I just write a book? I'm already doing a lot of this stuff.
Great. Yeah. Well, what was it like to write the book, like to actually write the book?
At first, it was very challenging for such an endeavor. I mean, it was like, where do I start? How do I do this? And what I decided to write about were things that I was interested in, like ancient mysteries. And that started when I was a young boy back in the 80s, watching a show called In Search Of, hosted by Leonard Nimoy. And they had all kinds of unusual subjects about, the pyramids or Atlantis, things like that. And I thought, I want to write a book about something I'm really interested in and passionate about. In addition, I had traveled to different places in the world and visited some like very ancient sites, mysterious sites. So I thought, wow, maybe I can pull in some of my travel experiences to these places and my interest and write a book about it. And what helped me, I'm a very visual person. So I took a piece of paper out and I did what's called a mind map. And just a general idea of what a mind map is, you can imagine a wheel at like the central hub, and then you have like the spokes of the wheel coming out. So in the middle was the central idea, like what it is I want to write about. And I had these lines coming out from that, and I broke it down into chapter ideas. And then in those chapter ideas, those became little mini wheels. And then I branched off from those. What content do I want in those chapters? So I had to do a visual depiction to give me a general idea of what I wanted to create. And then I started from there, just one chapter at a time, doing research and writing. And I would bounce around, it didn't have any much order at first. It kind of was what I felt like working on at that time. Then once everything was created, all the chapters were done, then it was a matter of assembling those into, a sequence that flowed and creating the connecting points between chapters.
Wow, that's really interesting. And then once you were done writing the book, how did the book get published?
I went through a self-publishing company called BookBaby. And the reason I decided to go the self-publishing route is the more I got into my book and just creating it, I just felt it was mine. I didn't want a publisher to come along and tell me what I could and couldn't do. And I'm like, you know what? I just want to create this how I want to create it. And so I decided to go to the self-publishing route, knowing also that going that route is going to be a lot of work because I'm doing everything. I'm responsible for everything. So yeah, BookBaby is the company I went with. They were very supportive. I connected with a childhood friend that's also a writer, and he's in process of publishing his first book. And he did the editing of my book. He connected me with another friend of his that does book formatting. And so he helped me between working with my friend James on the editing, and Ruben was a gentleman that helped me with my formatting. We got it done, we got it done, but it was a tremendous amount of work for self-publishing. It took me over 4 years to write my book. And then I was thinking, oh, I'm at the finish line. And then it's like, oh my gosh, I'm self-publishing this. And then realizing like editing, formatting, marketing, like now the work actually really begins. So it's definitely a labor of love for sure.
Got it. Yeah. Well, during that whole process, the writing and the publishing, was there anything that really surprised you?
I think just the amount of work involved. I mean, it was all these different aspects, like with the formatting, working with the formatter to get my book design right, how I wanted it to be. I mean, there was just, it was a tremendous amount of work. Like I knew there was going to be a lot going into it, self-publishing it, but until you are immersed in that, you don't realize like just how much goes into it. And so again, it's a labor of love. And I've enjoyed the process. It hasn't always been easy, but it's been very rewarding.
Great. I'm glad to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a piece of advice that you might give to aspiring authors?
Yes, I actually have a few pieces. The first would be to find an environment, to create an environment that is really going to help you with your writing. For some people, that might be like a quiet area, a study area. But actually, for me, I needed noise around me, and I couldn't write at home. So what worked for me was going to coffee shops, and that's where I would do my writing. In fact, most of my book was probably done in local coffee shops. So it's a matter of connecting with an environment that is going to help you optimize your writing skills. So that would be the first suggestion. The second suggestion would be to network with other writers and form what I call a mastermind group, where you can get together with a few writers and share encouragement with each other, share resources with each other, and kind of just kind of hold each other accountable in a nice way. A lot of times when we say like, oh, I want to complete this, it's always easier to kind of skate out of it if you're just kind of telling yourself. But if you have a group of people that are supportive and trusting, and you put something out there like, oh, I want to have, this chapter completed by the time of our next meeting, it's going to possibly give you a little bit more motivation to kind of get things done. So create a supportive environment for yourself.
That's really good advice. That's good. That's good. Well, do you have a favorite book that you like to recommend to people?
I do. It's Fingerprints of the Gods by Graham Hancock, because I love like ancient mysteries, ancient civilizations. And Graham Hancock, I believe, wrote that book back in the 90s. And it's just a classic. Graham's kind of one of my heroes. I met him a few times. He was very encouraging. And actually, another piece of advice for aspiring writers that Graham shared with me is he said, everyone gets writer's block, but he goes, you just have to push through it. Just get yourself, even if you don't feel inspired to write, just kind of, you have to sometimes force yourself to write, even if it's just a little bit. And so sometimes just by kind of pushing through and just writing a little bit, sometimes you can kind of gain the momentum and get the inspiration. So you can't always wait on inspiration to write. Sometimes it comes, it goes. Sometimes you have to kindle it,
That's so true. Yeah. So we did have a couple questions from the audience get written in, and the first one, Jesse from Camas asks, how did the cover get designed?
Okay. Fred Dunn was an artist of my book, and he's actually out of Canada. And I just happened to be on YouTube looking up videos on the subject of my book. And I saw that he did a video, and he had some artwork on there depicting some of the giants of this Paiute tradition or legend. And I thought, wow, that looks really cool. So I just reached out to him and I said, I love the artistic, your artistic work. And I'm working on a book right now. Could you give me an idea of how much it would cost or what it would involve with you doing a book cover? And so I just dialogued with him. And before long, he had designed me a book cover just how I wanted it. So it was through YouTube that I connected with him. And once my book was published, I sent him a signed copy. And of course, and he was on his Instagram and he was holding up the copy. He was holding up the copy of my book saying, this is my artwork here. I did this for the red-haired giants of Lovelock Cave and other ancient mysteries. So that's the story of the book cover.
That's great. That's a great story. All right, so Pete from Washougal asks, what is your favorite story from the book?
What is my favorite story? It's probably about the red-haired giants, and that comes from a northern Paiute tale of a race of red-haired giants that lived in an area, they call it the Lovelock area. And these giants, they were violent, they were cannibalistic, they attacked local tribes, and the Paiutes banded together with other tribes and finally eliminated the giants. And then it wasn't until 1911 that their remains were found in Lovelock Cave. And the whole central story of the book goes, well, who were these people? Where did the skeletal remains end up? So there is a mystery to that. So it would have to be the central story of the red-haired giants.
Great, great. Well, how can people find you and find your book?
Yes, my book is on BookBaby. So you can go to bookbaby.com. They have a bookshop there. And again, the title of my book is The Red-Haired Giants of Lovelock Cave and Other Ancient Mysteries. And I would appreciate if people are interested in purchasing it to go there, because BookBaby really is supportive of self-published authors like myself. The book is also on Amazon and Barnes and Noble as well. My website is theancientgiants.com, and there's more information about the book. I have a page dedicated to the chapters of the book with a breakdown with excerpts from each chapter to give you an idea of what's in there. And of course, you could always go to the Camas Library, and I have a copy that I donated there, and you could check it out.
Great, great. Yeah. Well, do you want to read an excerpt from your book?
Absolutely.
Great.
Okay. This is called Teotihuacan, the place where men became gods. The group of soldiers marched down the avenue towards two enormous step pyramids. The closest pyramid was to their right. The further pyramid lay straight ahead where the avenue ended. The clank of armor and weapons echoed along the deserted road that the Aztecs called the Avenue of the Dead. This was an appropriate name. This place had seen much death. These bearded, white-skinned foreigners were mesmerized at the huge alien structures that lay before them. The sun glinted off their blood and dirt-splattered steel helms, breastplates, arm and leg greaves. The reflection of the sun glinting off their armor gave the illusion that these individuals were godlike, as if they were an army of the heavenly hosts themselves. However, this was no angelic army by any means. These angels of death carried with them the tools of their trade: razor-sharp swords made of Toledo steel, halberds, long poles with axe blades and spear points mounted on the end, which could easily remove limbs and split open a skull. Then there were the wooden crossbows that could shoot an iron-tipped bolt all the way through its unfortunate victim. No, these were no angels, perhaps fallen angels to the eyes of the Aztecs. These were conquistadors, their very name meaning those who conquer. Indeed, these soldiers of Spain lived up to their name, slaughtering and enslaving the Aztecs. The reward of their destruction was gold, jewels, slaves, and other exotic riches. These conquerors believed it was their God-given right to subjugate these savages who performed human sacrifices to demonic gods. As the conquistadors approached the closer pyramid on their right, the leader of the group, a cunning and battle-hardened man named Hernan Cortez, asked the native translator who accompanied him, "Did your people build this place?" The dark-skinned native with shoulder-length jet black hair and wrinkled face laughed and replied, "My people were not the builders of Teotihuacan. This city was built by the Quinamitzin." "Who were they?" replied Cortez. The translator looked at Cortez in his eyes with a much more serious look and said, "They were the giants who came from the heavens in the time of the second sun." As far as Cortez and his men could tell, the incredible architecture that stood before them could have been built by the devil himself.
Well, that's intense. Thank you for reading that. And thank you, Floyd, so much for coming and talking about your book and your process. It was all really, really interesting. And I will put links to the book you recommended in the show notes on the YouTube video. So thank you again so much. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.